One of the biggest challenges that we see facing IT recently is the procurement of devices, right? I refer to them as the three Ps. IT's always been tasked with procuring devices, provisioning those devices, and providing those devices to their users. This has been problematic for a long time. It's more challenging today to buy 100 laptops of the same manufacturer, the same type, the same model than it was in 2019. That's starting to change, right? And you'll see that ebb and flow over time. It might not be as hard this month as it was last month. It might be harder next month than it was this month, depending on how things continue to progress. But what we're proposing with a DaaS solution is putting an organization into a place where they don't have to worry about that. So instead of going out and buying a laptop and provisioning it for someone in our accounting department and having to wait for those laptops to come in, having to spend man hours and resources into getting those devices configured, packaging them up, and then again, presumably because we're dealing with a hybrid workforce, maybe not being able to walk down the hallway and hand them to accountant number one and accountant number two, but then distribute those devices or ship those devices out to the folks who need them. So again, a lot of wasted time, a lot of wasted effort in doing that. So we can leverage DaaS for an organization who chooses to adopt it to enable a bring your own device strategy. Now you simply use whatever machine you have, right? Open up your browser, you go to a URL, plug in some information, log in with your credentials, and you're off and running in a minute, maybe 2 minutes, depending on who the user is. So we can really simplify that approach to how we connect our people to the resources that they need. Again, some folks may be listening to this and may hear that and say, well, that's great, but organizationally, we will never go to a BYOD approach. And that's fair, right? So many companies still feel the need that, hey, just in the interest of absolutely ensuring the security and integrity of our data, even though we don't need to, we're still going to provision that device out there for our users, right? It just makes us feel safe. And that's okay. But what DaaS would allow you to do is to then, if you find yourself in that situation, maybe spend less on those devices, right? You don't need to go out and buy the most expensive business grade laptop or desktop that you can for your users. You can now get them something relatively inexpensive that, hey, if it doesn't come back to the company, you'll care significantly less if it's a lost $300 device as opposed to a lost $3,000 device. And that brings us to the other part of it, right? We talked about procuring, provisioning, and providing the equipment. What about reclaiming it, right? How do we go and get those devices back if a user leaves our organization? And if we aren't leveraging a DaaS solution, right? If we're still in that old-fashioned approach of, I take my data locally, do my stuff on it, and then I put it back when I'm done, leveraging a VPN. What happens if a user leaves the organization? We can't reclaim that device, and there's still privileged information, right? Patient information in the case of healthcare, customer information in the case of financial services or organizations like that. Do we have to assume a breach? Do we have to take any preventative measures of making sure that information isn't in the open and can't be used against us, can't be used against our customers or our patients? There are alternative solutions to that as well, right? Folks that we talked about EDR and MDR solutions being kind of the alternative to DaaS. There are folks that leverage mobile device management solutions too, right? They'll encrypt the hard drives of their laptops. They'll have remote capability to lock those devices down. And again, there's merit to that approach, but our whole thought is using DaaS to simplify that so that you don't even need to worry about those considerations anymore, right? We can put you in a position where your data will never live on those devices because there's no reason for it to ever have to exist outside of the data center that you manage, you maintain, and you control. So even if you find yourself in a situation, again, where you're the one provisioning the devices, your organization has made the choice to continue to provide equipment, you can provide equipment that is much less significant, that is much lower cost, and that ultimately at the end of the day, if you don't get back, it doesn't hurt you from a financial perspective, and it certainly doesn't hurt you from a security perspective.